So, ladies and gentlemen, we started out in Bahrain. We have reached round 24. We have hurtled like speedy things around the world, and we've ended up 282 miles away from where it all began. Yep, Abu Dhabi, the Yas Marina Circuit, round 24 of 24 in 2024. Welcome along to the season finale at the track that's hosted the most season finales of any circuit in Formula One history. This is the 13th World Championship Grand Prix around the circuit. 3.28 miles to come. Full throttle for your lap distance at 76%. 16 turns, 9 to the left and 7 to the right. Slight elevation changes, but we're by the sea. There's no real hills around here. The tyre compounds, as they were last year, Pirelli brought their softest in the range. C5, C4 and C3. And we have 2 practice sessions that take place in the daylights and 1 under the lights, which is when we're going to be racing come Sunday for what? 58 laps of this glorious circuit. It is a glorious day. The sun is out. Track temperature 41 degrees, air temperature 27 degrees, nice and air conditioned in the commentary box. Craig Slater and Anthony Davidson alongside me. Welcome, gentlemen, to the end. And what a long season it has been, and what a great season it has been for Max Verstappen and McLaren or Ferrari. One of those two are going to take the championship of Formula One.
Yeah, there's still obviously the Constructors' Championship up for grabs. It looks like it's McLaren's to lose, but Ferrari have been strong. Had 1-2 finishes this season. I'm sure most people have forgotten this lengthy season of F1 of 24 races, but yeah, that surprised me at least when I did my research.
Well,
so it can be done.
Did
some research for a change. It can be done. So yeah, McLaren have to have just a good, solid weekend to get it done.
So with the teams in the paddock, what's the feeling of Ferrari and McLaren? nervous ship one and just optimism in the other.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me back here.
Yeah.
4 years, I think, since I was last in the Coventry. Did you lose my phone number?
No, I just forgot how bad you were the first time.
In terms of, I think it's McLaren's to lose, isn't it? But the pressure's all on them. I think that Ferrari are going into this thinking, can we put them under pressure? And if they're running 1-2 in this Grand Prix on Sunday, that is significant pressure, because then almost certainly McLaren will need one car on the podium and they need the other car most likely in the top 6. So that's what they need to try and bring about, that scenario.
I feel like you saw my brothers here for this session today, because brothers is what it's all about. Introducing, ladies and gentlemen, Arthur Leclerc, or Arthur Leclerc, as Anthony would like to call him. Car number 39, and driving in place of Carlos Sainz alongside his brother, Arthur and Charles, driving for the same constructor, and the first time two brothers have driven for the same constructor since the sporting reg said that an entrant had to design and construct their own car back in 1981. They're the 20th pair of brothers to have taken part in an official F1 session, and the first brothers we'll see on the track at the same time for the same team. So welcome from European Le Mans, I think, isn't it? That's what Arthur's been doing this year to Formula One. We've also got Isaac Hadjar in for Max Verstappen. Isaac Hadjar, who rather revealed that he was going to be driving for RB, or Racing Bulls as they're going to be known for next season. He, Anthony's gang this, a rookie error, letting the cat out of the bag. Luke Browning has come up from F2 to F1 for this session in place of Alex Albon. Felipe Drugovich, a long-time regular in the commentary box here, standing in for Lance Stroll. This man, Ayuba Uwasa for Yuki Tsunoda down at RB, and Ryu Hirakawa for Oscar Piastri at McLaren. A lot of drivers coming in for an FP1 session. Ted Adams has been watching the garage. Hello, Ted.
Hello, Crofty. Hello, Anthony. Hello, Craig. And everybody, welcome to the Abu Dhabi pit lane for the last free practice one of 2024. Yes, I rather like Crofty, the brothers Leclerc. It sounded like a sort of pair of French highwaymen, or maybe a folk band from Cambridge. Or you could have Leclerc and Leclerc, an expert law firm specialising in commercial law based in Monaco. But anyway, we have Arthur Leclerc, or Arthur as his brother calls him, going out in the Ferrari with the massive aero rake on the back. So make no bones about it, all of these young drivers, or debut drivers, or rookie drivers, whatever you want to call them, they have legwork to do for the teams who want some steady running. They don't want to see times that go top the classification. They want steady running and information and experience along the way for these drivers. Noted. But the interesting thing for me, and something that Charles Leclerc was keen to underline, was that it's a just reward for his brother, given the sacrifices that Arthur had to make or were put upon him when he wants to be a racing driver. Because Charles' parents, especially his late dad, Hervé, said to Arthur, look, I'm sorry, I can't afford to put both of you through racing driver school to fund your careers. So it was always the younger brother, Arthur, who was the one who had to miss out. And that's what, very touchingly, Charles paid tribute to, the sacrifices that Arthur basically gave up his racing career until later in life when they could afford to fund it. So Charles is so happy that he's got
to stay on curbs and target your air where possible for the best data.
Yep, so Hirakawa getting the message there from McLaren. Charles so happy that they could do this very cool first, Crofty, as you say, be the first brothers in the same session, in the same year, in the same team. The first in Formula One.
Yeah, I remember talking to Charles a few years ago, actually, and I said, yeah, who's coming up through the ranks that might challenge you in Ferrari one day? He said, my brother, Arthur, watch him. He's really, really fast. So I think, for Charles, it's that he was absolutely right. His brother did deserve a go. And, for Arthur himself, absolutely superb. Now, this man, Ryu Hirakawa, and you know an awful lot about him, and you've been watching him a lot, and he is a supremely talented sports car driver.
He is, yeah, he's very good. As you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, he's a very accomplished racing driver, is Rio. Very experienced, so he took that advice on board, of course, from his team with all those aero rakes in the car. You daring go over the curbs. He knows full well what that means. He's used to looking after his equipment when he needs to. It's all part and parcel of being a good sports car driver, but this is something, I mean, every time you step into the car, it's an absolute joy, because it does pretty much everything you'd ever want your car to be doing. Say, you drive a hypercar at the moment, the Formula 1 car is just like nothing else you'll ever step in.
It's the same for everyone, but it's a championship decider weekend. Is there any kind of inconvenience in Piastri missing the session? Yes, it's not representative, it's in the drawing, but it's such a significant weekend for the team. It doesn't feel ideal.
Well, Arthur's on the track, but if you watch our pictures here, Sean isn't. And there's a bit of work going on. This is an inconvenience. Ted, down to you.
Yeah, I believe it's an issue with the battery, actually. The Ferrari of Charles Leclerc was all ready to go, and then they fired it up, and then they saw there was an issue and suddenly put the car on stands. It was on stands about 4 minutes before the start of the session, Crofty, and we thought it was something that would be quickly remedied, but not, it seems. The floor is off, and they're having a look at the area around the battery. Obviously a very sort of heavy part, and something they have to be careful with given the levels of charge going in and around it. But hopefully they'll get it fixed, I would say, within the next 10 minutes. But problems with the hybrid system, the energy recovery system, and the battery itself.
Wheel clearance is bad, I'm struggling. Okay.
And he's come to a stop, Isaac Hadja, just out of turn 7. That's why we've got the yellow flag currently.
What did he say with the clearance? I'm struggling.
He said the wheel clearance is bad. It means that the steering wheel, his hands are touching his legs, probably, when his knees, when he turns, Ted. So it's yeah, obviously he's new to this car and hasn't quite done the seat fit, or the team and himself hasn't quite done the seat fit well enough. It's a common problem, actually, when you first hit the track and you drive in anger, that these problems are exposed.
Yeah, especially at something like turn 6 and 7, which is the chicane.
Maximum steering angle.
Yeah, which is where he came to a stop. He has got going again, as Isaac Hadja. As you can see, George Russell is on the track. Max Verstappen sitting this session out, so he's in the garage or hospitality. To be honest, Craig Slater, given what's happened since Qatar, and especially in the last 24 hours, the fact that there's a bit of distance between George and Max for the next hour of the league probably isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, well, we heard the comments in the build-up to this session. It's worth just going into a little bit more of the detail in terms of how the chronology of everything yesterday and why we didn't get to put questions to Max relating to the accusation, the particular accusation that George Russell made, and that was because of the sequence in which they spoke to the media. But I was around and spoke to the Dutch journalists who were able to talk to Max after George had made that alleged threat, and he said he would put...
This is Isaac Hadja, and I said he was a bit of a stop.
Oh yeah, so sorry, Croxy. So you see him turn. He went to turn in. Watch this. He's good at. Goes to turn in, and his hand stops when he gets to about 90 degrees.
Yeah, I have zero efficiency, sorry. Copy that.
Zero efficiency. I guess he's talking about braking energy recovery as well at the same time. He's struggling with his to turn the steering wheel, but also he didn't feel like the brakes were quite there for him. The fly-by-wire hybrid system braking that they have in these cars.
All his parents are here. He's still out the track. If you want to ride on board with Isaac Hadja, you can do so. And any of the other 19 drivers as well, with the Sky Sports app, Sky Sports login for it. And if you're watching on Sky Q, Sky Glass, Sky Stream, you should direct a lot of your own control.
Parents of very normal means as well, Isaac Hadja. Really had to scrimp and save to get him into single seat series, and once he's on the Red Bull program, but just that half a point, hasn't he, deficit to Gabriel Bortoleto. He wants to go in as champion to F1 if he can.
Yeah, it's like Silverstone, he was doing FP1 for Red Bull, and he went on and did rather well that weekend. So he said there's no problem whatsoever in terms of his F2 work and competing here in FP1. Jack Doohan we haven't mentioned, car number 61, an early taster of what life is going to be like in Formula 1 for the man driving in Alpine next season, standing in for Esteban Ocon, who has been dropped by the team ahead of his time with Haas, which begins at the Young Driver Test on Tuesday. Back to Russell and
just to
Max.
finish that point, it took a little while, 3 goes basically, to get a definitive "I didn't say that" from Max via the Dutch journalist, but ultimately he did say, he said, Max, he said, George, yes, he's making that up, was what he ultimately said. So, listen, how it plays out from here is interesting. I have contacted sources within the FIA to see if they have any kind of investigation, if that's likely or not. The guidance I'm getting is that there isn't likely to be. It is on the FIA president's radar. He knows about it. Might he intervene? Not necessarily to investigate, but maybe to mediate and to try to calm the situation down. I think that would be an intervention from Mohammed Ben Sulayem most of us would agree with.
Yes, if only they were wearing the wrong jewellery, it would be looked into already. But there was a claim by George Russell. Max was swearing in the stewards room. Our indication is that there wasn't any swearing going on in the stewards room from Max Verstappen. You know, who needs a right to reply from what George was saying, because it is quite serious, the comments that George was making. There is no love lost, obviously, between the two. And is this normal at this stage of the season? Longest season ever. Second triple header in the space of 6 races in 8 weeks. Are they just getting fed up and hanging around each other, or is it a bit more?
Well, I mean, I'm fed up hanging around you, so I guess it's...
You know what to do, is it all you know?
See what we mean, everyone? See what we mean?
And I was in it first. And there's Charles Leclerc, who's walking around the back of the garage. He's more than welcome in the commentary box as well. In fact, I did actually ask Max to come up yesterday.
Well, as I said, struggling with wheel clearance. Everything with the seat is fine, except limited.
When you're standing in for a drive and the car is not exactly set up for you, these are the sorts of things that are going to be happening. That's not a great issue for it. Look, let's just finish on the Max George thing. Is it just a bit of niggle at the moment, or is it a bit more than that?
I think it's a little bit more than that. And yeah, George is obviously, he's that type of character that, you know, that's why he heads up the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, because he has an eye for detail, and he wants things to be right, to be done right, in the right way, and he obviously didn't feel it wasn't happening in the right way from his fellow competitor in Max Verstappen in the last race, and he's not afraid to bring this kind of thing up. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. Is it, like you say, like we joked about, is it just because it's been a really long season, the longest season ever in Formula 1? Everybody feels like they need a break, the drivers themselves as well, and feel a bit angry with the whole situation. I feel like, yeah, it's been a long season, the championship's done in terms of the Drivers' Championship, and I think they can all do with a long, well-earned rest.
Lewis Hamilton could probably do with a break, given the season that he's had at Mercedes. Came out yesterday saying it has been much harder than he anticipated it would be, but for the time being, let us just pay tribute. 246 stars at Mercedes for Lewis Hamilton, a partnership for the ages that has yielded 6 world titles, 84 wins, 78 poles, and 153 podiums. Well done to Joe Wayne, by the way. Crash helmet for the weekend for what is his last race in Formula 1 for the time being, with some great shots on it. But it's a big thank you from Mercedes to Lewis Hamilton. He's used Mercedes power for every single one of his 355 races and counting so far. He goes to Ferrari. It's going to be a very emotional year this year for Lewis. Before we get into that too much, Ted, I did want to go down to you if we could. Charles Leclerc, last seen pacing around at the back of the garage. This is turning into quite a serious problem, isn't it?
Well, I mean, in fact, I think I indicated that the other problem with the battery, the power unit or the ERS, we're waiting for confirmation from Ferrari. It is something that takes time to fix. Charles is still optimistically standing by the side of the garage, looking at the mechanics doing their work. But I think we might go into free practice 2 with neither of the regular Ferrari drivers. Sorry, I'm not hearing the beeps that I normally hear. I think we could go into free practice 2 with neither of the regular Ferrari drivers, on whom they will depend to try and win them the Constructors' Championship, Crofty, having done FP1. I'm looking at this repair on Leclerc and thinking it's at least another 10, 15, 20 minutes. Maybe, if they're lucky, they'll get him out for a little run at the moment. Silver lining, these aren't representative conditions. We say that every time we do an FP1 in Abu Dhabi, but it's not the best start for the Scuderia so far.
No, it is not. The Scuderia that starts 21 points behind McLaren in the championship. That is Oscar Piastri's car, driven by Ryu Hirakawa. Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris have both been noted by race control for a possible impeding situation. We'll just wait to see a replay of that, which I'm sure we'll get in a moment, but it does give us a chance to continue talking about Lewis and Mercedes. The greatest partnership between a driver and a team that we have seen in Formula One, and everything has to come to an end. And you work for Mercedes, you know what the feeling is like in the team. They'll have known this day was coming, or this weekend was coming. It probably doesn't make it any easier to cope with this weekend.
No, obviously, like Lewis said in his interview, that mixed emotions from his side, and I think from the team's side as well. It's a real end of an era, and what an era it has been, the Lewis Hamilton era at Mercedes. Mercedes powertrains, but also Mercedes as a team in Brackley. And, I mean, wow, what he's brought to the team, I don't think Formula One could have ever envisaged what he's been able to achieve on and off the track.
Yeah.
He's really changed the playing area of Formula One, hasn't he? The field of play that we all know, or what we knew Formula One to be. He's rewritten the history books.
To get all 10 teams to sign up to a diversity and inclusion charter is one of his great legacies, without question. I don't think it would have happened without his partnership with Toto Wolff. And how interesting, though, to hear him talk about how he underestimated the emotional difficulties of this year, this long goodbye. And just a couple of races ago, remember.
And this is the impeding incident. Lando speeding towards the final corner.
Yeah, just be careful behind you.
So that was Lewis trying to find a gap with the Sauber in front of him.
You get the impression Lewis wasn't necessarily aware that Lando was coming at him so fast, and he really did appear at a rate of knots there.
Just a couple of races ago, I was going to say that the radio message at the end of the Grand Prix at Interlagos, which we ultimately found out was genuine, that he was thinking about walking away. It was so bad. And for someone as experienced and tough as Lewis to feel as uncomfortable as that, just shows you it can't have been easy this year.
No, it's been a very, very tough year. Obviously, with big highs as well. Silverstone, of course, being one of them. We've got a couple of very special Lewis Hamilton features for Saturday and Sunday for our build-up to qualifying in the Grand Prix. Don't miss them. Yes, he will be around next year. We'll all have to get used to seeing him in red for the first time.
That's going to be so odd. Yeah. I can't. Yeah, until I see it, I can't kind of picture it. It's and I think the Tifosi they can't wait. I was speaking to some of our Italian colleagues last night, Crofty, and they cannot wait to see him arrive.
But there were some friendly faces, including the one you just saw there, Jock Clear, who Lewis knows very well from his Mercedes days, of course. And
indeed, and also Loic Serra.
Loic Serra, who in charge of the chassis.
He was Lewis's ally in terms of car philosophy.
Yes.
I think that's right. So they're like-minded. That will be important.
That's a very fine point.
He'll be shifting that cockpit rearward before we know it.
Franco Colapinto goes third fastest, behind Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Actually, top three separated by just under 0.3 of a second. We are in the early stages of FP1. So far, no time on the board for Charles Leclerc, a battery issue keeping him in the garage as Norris goes quickest. Yeah, look, these are early days. But as I say, no time for Charles Leclerc as he's stuck in the garage with a battery injury, I was going to say. Lando Norris goes fastest, and they're the sort of things that McLaren need and Ferrari don't. And you just want a clean weekend when there's a championship on the line. And Ferrari do have it all to do, because no constructor has ever come from behind to win the Constructors' Championship at the final race of the season. But lots to talk about that as the weekend unfolds. Let's talk about this man, Zhou Guanyu, who got his cat cushion from Lando Norris for getting his points in Qatar, driver of the day in Qatar. And I just have to say, as a feel-good story, I love the fact that Zhou Guanyu got some points on the board and at last, this year, showed exactly what he can do, because he is a much better driver than that Sauber has allowed him to be.
And in terms of the news that's come out this week, Graham Loudon has been appointed team principal of the Cadillac team.
Yeah.
Is that a potential way back for Zhou Guanyu, because Graham is his manager?
Well, this is very true. The news, it came out today, and I've known about it for quite some time. Valtteri, it's been a pleasure. Love that on Joe's crash helmet. They've been a very good driver pairing. They pushed each other as best they can in a car that hasn't been particularly good this year. But he's made a point, Joe, of saying, look, I'm not going to go and drive in another series. I'm not going off to WEC or anything like that. I want to stay around in Formula One and see what's there for 2026. Now, the smart money says that he'll end up at Ferrari as a reserve driver. But when your manager now becomes team principal at the 11th team, not that they've got that official guaranteed it's definitely going to happen in 2026, but it's looking like it is going to happen, it's got to be, and I hate to use this phrase, but I'm going to because I don't get the chance very often, an early Christmas present.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, well done. That's the first one.
Yeah.
He's heavily backed, though, isn't he? That's the other
Yes.
point about Zhou Guanyu. And if you've got a fledgling business that needs investment in the factory and all the rest of it, yes, they've got General Motors backing, but that kind of ready capital is doubtless helpful.
Would you put Zhou Guanyu in as a race driver elsewhere? Have you seen signs that you think, yeah, look, I have to say I have.
It's always hard to tell.
Have you seen signs that you think actually he's a better driver than what we see on the track?
I would say yes, he is. And we've seen that in the past when the car was more competitive. It's always hard to tell, actually, when I've been in that position myself, actually, as a driver. When you're in a car, with all due respect, that's not going to be at the sharp end of the field, and you're out of the spotlight. So it's hard to then judge what skill a driver actually has when they're just at the back the whole time through no fault of their own. You've only got your teammate to compare against, and on average, he's been at least as good as Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, I agree. Can I just say, where it says A. Leclerc, when Charles comes on the track, I want to see another Leclerc. Is it just me? I don't know.
Well,
he is the one Leclerc on the track at the moment, Charles, with that battery issue. Welcome back to Abu Dhabi. It is A. Leclerc.
should it have been
not
Ale?
I, Leclerc.
Should his driver abbreviation have been Ale?
Yes,
Crofty?
it should. No, cheers to that. Ale. I don't know what his official. No, it's on the side of the board. It's Lel. L-E-L. Yes, it should be Ale. That sounds much more like it. One Leclerc on the track, the other Leclerc in the garage, and Ayumu Iwasa has just come out onto the track. He hasn't set a time yet.
So the most important thing here for Ferrari is obviously getting your ride heights set correctly. We had a change of the regulation, didn't we, it was for Vegas, and a lot of teams had to work hard to reassess where they run the car in terms of ride heights. So that's one critical area. So he's done the aero rake testing as Leclerc. That's something. Arthur Leclerc. There's the other Leclerc. So Arthur's done the aero rake testing. They would have got the data from that and sent that back to the factory for ongoing work for next year's car and for any parts that are on the car here, of course, as well. But the next part is obviously doing the next phase of that is the ride height setting. So you only need to be running at full speed down the back straight to assess that, and also put the car into a bit of other dynamics out there as well. Say turn 9, where Lewis Hamilton's working his way up to now on the back straight. It's another corner where you're going to be testing the car in terms of load. They had a great onboard shot as well through the visor cam. You can see Lewis just working the steering wheel through the corner.
Went through the corner eventually, didn't it?
Such a long corner, that turn 9, that you go through the different crosswinds and it affects the way that the car, the balance is. Now this is a very tricky part of the track. Look how the car's dancing around the whole time, the rear moving, and that's what, when the rear tyres were overheating towards the end of the lap, that's what you try to avoid as a driver through the first and second sectors. So it's a very different, why I love the visor cam, is a very different ride, a very different experience for the fans watching compared to this shot we have here. It looks like the car's on rails.
Yeah. 5,000ths of a second between Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Mercedes back 1 and 2. Lando Norris is third. Cast your eyes down the tower on the left-hand side to P9. Let's talk about the Abu Dhabi do and hear from Jack Doohan.
Terrible.
Being in a position to being reserve driver, and I have the option to race for this last race, which is ahead of my 2025 season. So it's just a great opportunity for me.
You had an option?
Yeah, I had an option. The team decided that it was best for Esteban to participate in the test. They came to an agreement, so I was able to then fulfill my duties as replacing him for this race.
Okay, so it hasn't been something completely out the cold. You're ready. You've done a nice bit of preparation.
Yeah, the team have been preparing me very well as part of the academy. TPC also on the simulator, so I'm feeling great ahead of the weekend, yes.
Great stuff, exciting.
You're smarter than the average commentator, Crofty.
like a picnic.
That's dating both of us, I'm afraid.
It absolutely is. TPC, Jack was going on about TPC.
Testing of previous cars.
So that's everything he's been doing this year in preparation for this moment.
Yeah, it's a two-year-old car. That's part of the rules in a rookie driver in an older car. And yeah, you can do many thousands of kilometers of testing if you wish.
I just wanted to extend the metaphor briefly and say it's because Yogi Bearman cannot drive today because he's not a rookie anymore, but might have done this test.
Yogi Bearman is going off to Super Formula, isn't he, for a test over there to get some very good experience of Suzuka, which he hasn't driven yet. Ted, you wanted to come into this conversation.
I just need to clarify Jack Doohan's use of the word option. So sometimes in Formula One, when a driver says, I had an option, it means that they had something in their contract which said that the option for a race drive at some point in the season. I want to stress that is not the case with Jack Doohan. He meant it in if there was an opportunity, I was the team's option to fill in the seat. And that's exactly what happened. They came to a deal with Esteban Ocon to release him from his Alpine duties early, and in that case, their option was to take the services of Jack Doohan, given that he's racing there next year. So I wanted to clear that up because Jack was clear that we make sure we say that it wasn't that he was promised a seat, Crofty, that he had an option for a assigned seat, a drive this year. Okay,
it's really
clearing that up. Yep.
Thank you very much, Ted. It was really interesting in the paddock in Qatar on Sunday night. As Charles Leclerc looks like he's going to come onto the track soon, and we finally will get two brothers on the track at the same time for the same team. Brilliant. We've been waiting for a while now, 25 minutes.
At the end of this lap, you can go for your second push.
As Toto Wolff was revealing that Esteban Ocon wasn't going to be driving here for Alpine on Sunday night in Qatar, and I think the first murmurs came from Toto Wolff's post-race press conference. Alpine were then hosting a press conference explaining what the situation may or may not be. Esteban Ocon was just coming.
Yeah, I feel big deck for the second half already. Okay, understood.
Esteban Ocon was just coming down the steps with Ayu Komatsu after having a meeting with his new boss at Haas, and had already gone over to Haas to make sure that he could sort that out before anyone announced that he wouldn't be driving here for Alpine. All taking place within about 15 minutes of each other in the paddock. It's amazing what happens after a race.
It's a shame the way it ended as well for Esteban Ocon, through no fault of his own.
The man who has won the one race that Alpine have won has got podium finishes for them as well. He's been a very good servant for the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sorry, Craig, through no fault of his own, I was going to say it in Qatar, pinched between two cars and out of the race at the first corner. So that's how his story ends at Alpine.
Yes, it merited more than, I think, a single paragraph in a news release. That was the point.
So he did post his crash helmet, didn't he, that he was going to be wearing for this weekend, and thanked the team himself, Esteban Ocon.
It's fascinating to think that there's even been speculation that Jack Doohan's seat at some point next year might be under threat. There was talk that Flavio Briatore was interested in us, Franco Colapinto. Is it better having this as a kind of race zero, or if you're going into Formula One properly, would you rather have a pre-season under your belt?
Well, like Jack was saying, he's driven a lot of kilometres in the TPC days in the car, so he's experienced in terms of just driving around by himself. But it's the wheel-to-wheel racing that you start to lose that that instinct, a racing driver's instinct, if you sit on the sidelines too much and only go general testing. Well, I can speak with my own experience with that. I was a test driver for 6 years before coming back into the racing scene, and it was a shock.
But at least you got regular Fridays.
I got regular Fridays, but it's still not out there racing wheel-to-wheel with feet. So that's the area where, as a driver, you're going to feel a bit rusty, but it comes back pretty good. So you would definitely prefer always, to answer your question, Craig, to have more testing in the car you're going to be racing in. But it's very limited these days anyway, so you might as well jump in. Here's one driver that I feel a little bit sorry for, Drugovic.
Correct.
I really rate him, a champion of his own right in F2, and he's been waiting in the wings for way too long, and he's driving brilliantly out here.
And will wait for another season as well, because he'll be part of the driver squad at Aston Martin next year too, with Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll in the seat. 14th fastest as Drugovic crosses the line. Let's head to the McLaren pit wall. Zak Brown, their CEO, is with us this weekend. Tense, nervous, anticipation, excitement to come, Zak. Who knows what this weekend will bring? Have you slept at all since Sunday night in Qatar?
Sleeping's pretty good, but I think you just summarized exactly the feelings coming into the weekend, but that's what makes sport and Formula One so awesome. So we're ready to go racing.
So let's talk about what's happening on the track. You have your FP1 session for Ryu Hirakawa. First and foremost, what's his program for this 60 minutes?
He's been running some aero rakes and doing some testing for us, so he'll go out and do some quick laps here shortly, probably with about 20-25 minutes to go. And Lando's doing his thing, just went out on some new softs, so all going according to plan.
And Zak, it's Anthony here. Have you been doing, we just heard from another driver, Jack Doohan, saying he's been doing TPC days. Have you done any of those with Rio at all this year?
Yeah, quite a few. He's been doing a really good job for us, very experienced, and he's been in our TPC car a handful of times. So we've got good expectations, so we'll do some good stuff here.
Craig here, Zak. Just wondering how you approach this weekend in general terms. Do you race it like a normal race, or how aware of are you of the situation? You have that 21-point advantage. So do you always have one eye on where Ferrari are?
First of all, Craig, what are you doing on this channel? But good to hear from you.
It's the end of the season. He's been a good boy. We thought we'd give him a bonus.
Experience.
Exactly.
Free work experience. That's what it is.
No, we need to come into this weekend just like we have the other 23 weekends. I think the minute you start doing things differently, obviously when you get into strategy and we see how the race plays out on Sunday, we'll be paying pretty close attention to the red cars. But for right now, it's business as usual, and I think it's important we don't try and chase a championship. We just go racing as we've done the last 23 weekends.
Craig Slater, we call him the Ryu Hirakawa of the commentary world, Zak. It's like a little FP1 outing for him.
You're going to put some aero rakes on his microphone.
That's exactly what we're doing right now. Thank you very much indeed. Meanwhile, the experienced commentator will take us through the rest of this lap with Lando Norris.
Not
Yeah,
Craig.
I'm looking at you. Unless Craig wants to do it.
So yeah, being serious here. Here's turn 9, Norris through sector 2, ends of sector 2 before turn 9. And then you got this double right-hander before you straight line the braking into turn 12. Sacrifice the exit there to open up turn 13. He could have done that a little bit more actually this lap. He ran maybe a bit too wide on the exit of 12. The car's got good grip and stability through the turn 14 left-hander, and then you're into the final 2 corners. Turn 16, run right over the curb. They've actually widened that corner for this year, so 8.5 tenths up, a 24.5. When you think last year FP1 the fastest lap time was a 26.0. They are really pushing the limits, and that's why they've all caught up Red Bull.
Yeah. I got a question. not on catching Red Bull, as we head to Max and GP.
So we should need to congratulate Max, surely. We haven't mentioned
the fact that he is going to become
be a
dad. And he and Kelly are expecting for some time next year. And yes, we should, because I think it's brilliant.
Think of those racing genes. 7 world championships. Three from the granddad, 4 from the dad, and the grandmother on Max's side.
It's
no slouch either.
It is a recipe for success in the future.
Man, the Williams destroyed me in the chicane. Didn't know what he was doing.
Copy that.
Luke Browning in the Williams, another FP1 driver getting his first taste today, and Isaac Hadja not overly chuffed on that. And it is many congratulations. Having spoken to Max about being a stepdad,
bonus dad he calls it,
yeah, bonus dad. He is so invested in that family unit, and I couldn't be more thrilled for both of them. The brothers Leclerc, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just looking here to make sure I'm right in saying this. The brothers Leclerc on the track at the same time. Arthur is just making his way through turn 2. Charles is completing what is his first time lap of this session. Brilliant for the 2 Leclerc boys.
Yeah, if Charles carries on driving fast enough, he might just catch his brother, but he's backed out of this lap.
Oh, come on, Charles. There'll be line astern right at the end. And Lewis Hamilton's crash helmet, by the way, with the red star in the middle for Niki Lauda. One of the big influences in persuading Lewis to come from McLaren over to Mercedes in 2012 for that debut in 2013. Question I was going to ask you, Anne, given that we are 1:24.5 for Lando Norris, so we are 1.5 seconds faster than we were last year. The DRS zone, the first DRS zone, is 50 metres shorter this year. Last week in Qatar, the DRS zone was 170 metres shorter. Are the FIA jumping the gun a bit on shortening these DRS zones, given the development work that has gone on with the cars? And they're all judging it on last year's cars, not this year's cars, because I thought you could have used a bit more DRS in Qatar to help cars get alongside each other.
I was surprised by the one in Qatar. I mean, the biggest problem in Qatar there was the DRS trains that we were getting into. But yeah, I think when it came to the actual race on the Grand Prix day on the Sunday, I felt like it could have been a little bit longer, actually, back to where it was for last year. But what you never want to see with DRS is for it just to be a simple pass on the straights.
Yeah, correct.
I don't want to see passing. I want to see proper overtaking, late braking. And we did see a bit of that in Qatar. The drivers had to work for it, but it just depends on. The problem is it depends on different cars' speeds, and obviously they're not all the same. So yeah, I think here they've shortened it a little bit again, but they have widened the circuit in many areas. I spoke about the final corner. You've also got that in turn 5 as well, the corner that leads onto the back straight and that zone you're talking about. And therefore the circuit is faster this year as well. I don't know how much it will be faster.
Whatever it is, I'm not liking these brakes even coming into the box. Just not feeling the normal deceleration.
Yeah, copy that.
He's comparing that to his normal feel, what he would have felt last week in Qatar. The brakes would have been changed, obviously, since then.
And he mentioned it in Qatar as well.
Yeah.
I remember there was a point, maybe in sprint qualifying or some part of the weekend, he complained about how he didn't have the same retardation, the same bite to the brakes when he first hit them. And you really do hit them. You stamp on the brake pedal for all you're worth when you're at full speed, when you've got maximum downforce load on the car. You cannot lock the brakes from when you first hit the brakes in one of these cars.
Max is watching on from the pit wall, so we'll watch this lap as well. George Russell, 3.2 miles of Abu Dhabi.
So yeah, he's done that first braking zone into turn 1, up through the hill, flat out through 2 and 3, then down the hill through the kink of 4, and then you hit the brake pedal into the turn 5 left-hander and let the car run out very wide at this part here. You can see how they've widened the circuit. Then you're looking for a white line, there it is, and that's the DRS. I'm not sure he's using it this lap, the DRS anyway. Is he? Yes, he is. Yeah. So that was, as you see it, close the slot gap just under the brake, and into turn 6 we go. Compromise the exit of that one to open up turn 7, and then get the car nice and straight and use a lot of that curb on the exit, and DRS again. That second time of the lap now down towards through the kink of 8, get the car straight for the braking into turn 9. It's barely a brake actually into this one. He won't be worried by that feeling of the brake pedal into turn 9 at least. And then let the car run out wide through the exit of 9, through the first 2 kinks of this right-hander here, and then into turn 12. And that's more middle of the circuit. That's what you're looking for 13, then into 14. Run right up to the barrier on the right-hand side. Flat out through the penultimate corner. Not so in the race condition, but in qualifying, yes. The car can take it and the tyres can take it. And that final corner, like we said before, use all of the curb and more on the exit to have his personal best final sector. But the rest of it, I'd say the first 2 sectors, the tyres probably have seen enough already.
Yeah, not his best lap of the weekend. There will be better to come, I'm sure of it. Lando Norris on the soft tyres, 2.5 tenths up on Lewis Hamilton. Then George Russell, Nico Hülkenberg and Franco Colapinto, the top 5. Best of the rookies so far, Isaac Hadjar, who's down in P9. Just looking to see, yes, he has been on the soft compound tyre. Charles Leclerc is ahead of his brother. Charles hasn't been on the medium tyres as yet. This is Isaac Hadjar. Luke Browning ahead of him.
I had to back off last corner.
That's twice now that Luke Browning has got in the way of Isaac Hadjar.
Yeah, he's less than happy, and that was a serious compromise into the final corner. But he's losing his cool quite quickly, isn't he? It's the first time I've really heard him on the radio, Hadjar. And yeah, if I was the team, it just, you know, come on, it's your first, it's your FP1. Just, I know
it can't be easy. I know this was planned a while back. It can't be easy to take his mind off that FC for 60 minutes and enjoy and keep it cool.
At a particular moment when there is a vacancy at RB, and they will be evaluating this quite seriously with regard to might he be partnering Yuki or Liam Lawson.
But part of that evaluation, Craig, surely has to be your attitude on the radio, and we've seen, and maybe, just throwing it out there, maybe this has been why Yuki Tsunoda's been overlooked, for example. Maybe they feel he's just a bit too stressy behind the wheel and they don't want that at Red Bull.
He's been a lot better this year.
A lot better, yeah, but yeah, you know the guy is capable of exploding on the radio, and I think it has got better.
I'm on the outside. I haven't got access to all the data. I just see the drivers on the track. That was a bit close.
Looked at it from that angle, didn't it?
Luke Browning has been shown a black and white flag. I said that was his second strike for getting in the way. He's been shown a black and white flag, which basically means next time you do that, mate, that's it, you're out.
It is really, it's intimidating when you first step foot in a Formula 1 car and you're out there with all the big dogs.
Yeah.
And you can't imagine what it feels like. You feel like you daren't step out of line here, but your eyes are everywhere. They're in the mirrors. But yeah, you're at the maximum of your capacity, and everyone expects that level from you in Formula 1. This is Formula 1. You behave. You behave how we're expecting you to. And if you don't, we're definitely going to jump down your throat and, you know, give you a hard time. That's just how this environment is.
Yeah, and I think Yuki Tsunoda, to me, copes very well in this environment, and I don't know why they're not looking at him for that Red Bull second seat for next season.
Me neither.
Where he seems to be being overlooked, if, as we expect, Sergio Perez makes way. More on that in a few moments. Got a clock on Jack Doohan currently. Fernando Alonso's just gone 11th fastest.
Jack
Doohan's on the soft tyre, making his way towards turn 9. Throw the car in.
Yeah, he's lost a little bit of time in the first sector, but personal best in the second.
This is Isaac Hadjar.
I had to back off last corner.
And that was Luke Browning once again, who had rather looked like impeded Isaac Hadja at the chicane earlier on in this session, and Luke Browning has been shown a black and white flag. One more offence and he'll be shown a black flag, and his session will end early. A lot of work going on now on that Red Bull car. Ted has been watching.
Thank you, Crofty. Yes, down at Sergio Perez, actually having quite a smooth session in comparison. Isaac Hadjar, he's been bleeping and blinding on the radio. He's had a bit of a fractious session. They're just taking some of the aero rakes off, so there's been an aero rake on the diffuser as well. So, I mean, even though he's done that time, what is he, within the top 10, Crofty? Hadjar, it hasn't been the smooth sailing, calm session that Red Bull wanted it to be. And when you consider that this is an audition for the Red Bull, for the RB drive next year, this session, I'm afraid to say this is an audition, and it's not going as smooth and swimmingly as Isaac Hadjar and maybe those around him and Christian Horner, Helmut Marko would want it to go. After the first time he had a go, which was in Silverstone Free Practice 1, the mood we got, the sort of feedback we got, was that they didn't think he was ready for Formula One yet, and that's why the discussions about Franco Colapinto came into it for a potential RB drive or Racing Bulls drive, Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, whatever you want to call it, for next year. That seemed to cool somewhat over the last month or so, and that Hadjar was back in. And so I wonder, Crofty, Anthony and Craig, whether the big winner from this session will actually be Franco Colapinto in terms of next year. I have to say, by the way, he's got a grid penalty coming in for an extra gearbox, has Colapinto. If you look at your parish notices, Colapinto is now on 6 gearbox and cassettes for the year, so that's not in conformity with the sporting regs. So I think Colapinto is heading for a grid penalty for more gearbox than units than he's allowed.
Yes, given the amount of crashes that Williams have had recently, and Franco Colapinto, 4 crashes in 3 weekends, 16 for the team in total. Hardly a surprise.
It's ebbed and flowed a little bit, Red Bull's interest in Colapinto. Certainly Isaac Hadjar was never a name I was being guided towards, that they had great enthusiasm to put him in, but it was the cost of Colapinto above all else. 7-figure fee to free him from his Williams deal. Yes, he brings all that Argentinian backing, but nothing has really looked like a simple move for Red Bull in that regard. But yeah, Hadjar was I remember there was optimism he would show enough here for the team to be confident to put him in. But yes, it's kind of, it's there or thereabouts, but is it impressive enough?
Meanwhile, Sergio Perez still insists that he's got a contract. His dad, I think, has Instagrammed to say we all owe Sergio an apology for daring to suggest that he might not be in the Red Bull next season. Well, you know, if his dad's listening, our sources indicate that Red Bull don't want to continue necessarily with Sergio Perez for next season, and they're trying to say, look, you can either go nicely, you know, step down, or we'll take a decision after the race in Abu Dhabi, and we'll make that decision for you. And the fact is that in the last few weekends, or second half of this season, Sergio Perez has not scored the amount of points that Red Bull want. 9 points in the last 7 Grand Prix weekends. Max Verstappen in the same car, 126. Yeah, and that's what loses you a Constructors' Championship.
And on that contract, does the contract have a clear stipulation that, yes, you'll be staying at Red Bull, but that he will be driving Formula One machinery? My information is, and it's a big surprise, is that it doesn't have that particular codicil within it. So theoretically, Red Bull could keep paying him, but have him drive show cars, or have him spend the year as an ambassador, but they would not need to keep him in a car.
And the fact is, and you know, the Constructors' Championship, for everybody who works for the teams, except the 2 drivers necessarily, is the important one. And Red Bull are going to finish 3rd this year, and a lot of that is down to the points that Sergio hasn't delivered for them since, well, you look at since the crash in Monaco that he had on the first lap in Monaco. It has been a lot of disappointment since then. I think he's had a best place of 6th, Baku aside, which would have been a better weekend if it had got through the last 2 laps.
It's obviously been frustrating for Sergio Perez and all of his fans that support him as well. The team want more performance. Sergio himself will want more performance. It's been clear to see from our side on the outside that there's a disparity between what Max is doing in the car in terms of results, as you said, Crofty, with the points, compared to what Sergio has brought this season. Well, I think when the car was better at the beginning of the year, I think it was easier to drive, and they started the season with a 1-2. Let's not forget, in Bahrain, they hit the ground running like they were at the end of last year, and we all expected the same level from both drivers as we saw from previous seasons, but it's deteriorated, definitely. I don't know why, but the facts speak for themselves, that the performance hasn't been there.
Sergio's admission in the press conference in Qatar was, the car has changed. I've had to adapt my driving style to change. I haven't adapted as quickly as Max, but that's not my fault. Well, you're a driver, and I'm sure you've been in cars where you've had to adapt your driving style too. Is that the driver's fault, or is that the engineers for not producing the car that you necessarily want?
From my experience, what usually happens in Formula One, at least where there is a development race, is that they will naturally develop the car to favour the faster driver. You have to earn your #1 status. It's not just because it's in your contract. Every year you have to hit the ground running, and I mean, look, Lewis is a prime example here. There's cameras are on him. He's everyone's hero, and we all know the history and the results that he's brought. But still, the focus starts shifting more towards the faster driver naturally in the team. If they want the car to be like X or Y, because it's just a natural thing that happens in the team. You're constantly having to reassert yourself as the #1.
Pierre Gasly's just gone 4th quickest, another driver who struggled opposite Max Verstappen. That was very much Checo's message in his media briefings yesterday, almost saying to Red Bull, be careful what you wish for. This is a really tough job opposite Max. It's a very particular car. There's no guarantee anyone is going to do significantly better than I have. And also judge me over the period. Yes, it's been harder this year.
Well, also, Craig, so if you put in a driver that's too young, maybe say Liam Lawson, for example, and we've seen it in the past with Alex Albon,
before it starts.
Pierre Gasly. It's you can be mentally destroyed by going up against, as a young driver, going up against somebody like Max Verstappen, and that's the tricky game that Red Bull are having to suss out at the moment in doing what they're maybe planning to do, and I'm sure they're weighing up all of these options.
Start of the season, Sergio Perez, second, Bahrain, Saudi, 5th in Australia, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, up to Miami, and then it started going wrong. 8th in Imola, since when a best finish of 6th. Now, yes, be careful what you wish for, but that's a fairly large sample period. I could do the 9 points in 7 race weekends at sprint as well if you want, but that's it. And I'm not trying to be nasty to Sergio Perez here, but the stats don't lie on this one. It isn't good enough. 6 Q1 knockouts this season. He's missed Q3 9 times. His teammate, is champion.
Charles Leclerc just about to go fastest here, I think, in this session. He's got a bit of traffic in the final corner. Is that going to hold him up? No, it doesn't. He goes fastest. But to answer your question properly that you threw to me, Crofty, about whose fault is it with a driver not, and as a driver myself, I only ever blamed myself.
Really?
It wasn't the car, it was me. And even worse, when you're in sports cars where you share the same car. You've got nowhere to hide.
There's no incentive for Checo to go quietly or
no,
easily.
That's the other thing. He's going to be bullish because contract negotiations, getting a payoff, whatever. He's not going to say, I'm going to retire here, I'm going to step down. But he will know inside that a lot of it he could have put right himself. By the way, Pierre Gasly has been noted by race control for failing to slow under yellow flags. The stewards are going to look at the Hamilton-Norris impeding incident where Lewis seemed to impede Lando after the session. They'll probably look at that after the session. And Craig Slater has breaking news to all those who fancy something of a Shanghai surprise this morning.
And Zhou Guan Yu, it's a further incentive for him to try and stay in Formula One, because the breaking news is that Shanghai is going to have a 5-year extension to its contract, so F1 will be racing there until 2030. Now, they were using this year's event as a kind of litmus test to see if they wanted to keep going Formula One and the teams wanted to stay there. It's the world's biggest car market, the biggest automotive market in the world. I think this is a major coup, especially in a week when Zandvoort's been lost from the calendar. To guarantee China stays is very important. So a five-year extension for Shanghai to continue to host Formula One.
Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso in this, the 200th Grand Prix since his last win, starts his latest flying lap, and we're on board with him, and he's a tenth and a bit off the pace through the first sector, which isn't bad for the Aston Martin. That looked a bit clunky.
They're all using a lot of that because they've widened the circuit, they've crofted it. It's taken them further out onto the curb than I believe they would usually have gone, and they're crashing over it quite badly. So, yeah, they're in the braking zone to turn 6. Second gear, pinch that corner, open up the next one to the right. He had a little snap of oversteer mid-corner through 6. Use a lot of that curb on the exit. DRS line comes up. There it is. Press the DRS on the way down towards turn 9 we go. And feed the car in early, let it breathe a little bit mid-corner, bring it back towards the exit of the corner. It's a double apex corner, is turn 9, 6-degree banking. Through the double king to the right, straight line the braking to 12, pinch the car in there. You've got a car in front of us, just keeps to the left-hand side, the McLaren. And then through turn 14 we go, flat out towards the penultimate corner. Keeps it flat out through the corner itself, brakes, turns in to the final corner. It's an early turn into that one, and crosses line and back to the cool switch just to recharge the battery just after he crosses the line.
I hope Felipe Drugovich is on a similar fuel load at the moment to Fernando Alonso. In terms of tyres, it's a similar tyre life as well, because Drugovich was exactly the same amount of time down through the first 2 sectors as Fernando was, and we actually get a really good impression of how close to Drugovich Alonso is when he crosses the line, though, ahead of Fernando Alonso. Not by much, 3/100ths of a second. But it kind of backs up what you were saying when we were talking about Drugovich a bit earlier, that he's driving really well at the moment, and he is, and he's a very, very fine driver. And I like the fact that Aston have sent him out for a lap on the soft tyres at exactly the same time as his more experienced teammate to get a really good handle on just how good he is in terms of over 1 lap.
I'm liking what I'm watching, Crofty, when it comes to Felipe Drugovich's driving. Hirakawa there just to lock up into turn 6, and it goes to show how, with the rookies behind the wheel, it goes to show how I like it, because it's great to see young drivers given a chance.
Yeah.
First and foremost. Secondly, it shows you how hard driving a Formula 1 car is. The things I'm looking for, and what I like, what I'm seeing with Drugovich, is that he's using a lot of the circuit.
Yeah.
The body language of the car, it's aggressive. As we see Joe Granu, even Missy hits at 6.
Same issue, guys, come on. Understand like crazy.
Yeah, so he's wanting the car to do one thing, the car's doing another on the braking zone, and then as a driver you have to readjust, you have to brake earlier. As we were saying, is it the driver's fault he went wide there? Yes, it is. Yeah. He's got understeer in the car, but brake earlier. So, if you know that's inherently in the car, that's the driver's responsibility to drive around problems. That's what racing drivers have to do.
He just drove around Charles Leclerc. Pierre Gasly, who, by the way, is not going to have any more investigation for that failing to slow under yellow flags. Ted, down to you, 4 minutes to go.
Gus, so many stories going around, Crofty. I don't know what to tell you next. There have been some upgrades. You haven't even got onto upgrades.
It's the last race of the season. Why are they bringing upgrades?
I know, it's bizarre, isn't it? Haas have got some upgrades around the rear corner of the car. And RB, or Racing Bulls, have a new front wing that they've brought. But well done to Hirakawa and to Iwasa. They've done a good job, actually made the 22nd and 23rd Formula One drivers from Japan in this session. And well done to Luke Browning as well. I believe that makes Luke the 169th British driver in Formula One to participate.
Very good.
Was that a stat that you had that I've stolen off you, Crofty?
No, not at all. I think that's a stat that you've sat up all night researching.
Or there have been 169, he's 170. I'm not quite sure. Anyway,
Ted,
so
given that there are a lot of planes flying over our hotel,
yeah.
I know you've been up all night doing plane spotting.
I have, although they tend to peter out around 4 a.m, so I stopped spotting after that. But Luke Browning, of course, winner of the Aston Martin Autosport BRDC Young Driver Award a couple of years ago. And he's done a great, as Liam Lawson Hamilton just lights up his RB going away from the pit box. Luke Browning, I'm sure his family have been watching us at home, following his progress, and short of the black and white check flag, he's done a great job for Williams, by which point I have to correct myself, Crofty, and it's both Williams who are going to have to take a gearbox penalty for Sunday. Alex Albon and Franco Colapinto, wherever they qualify, will drop 5 places. A consequence of the issues they had over the last few races, especially in Qatar.
Absolutely. Given Alex Albon goes into this race after back-to-back Q1 knockouts, and Williams' previous form here, which has not exactly been spectacular. I'm looking through my stats. I think we go back to 2017, which is the last time they scored a point here.
They're in a kind of constructors no man's land as well, aren't they?
Exactly.
There's nothing to lose particularly.
It's not a great track in terms of heritage. They've got the gearbox penalty. They might be on the back row.
I just think you say 169 British drivers, 102 different constructors, 172 different constructors in Formula One. Only 15 have won the Constructors' Championship, which is quite something.
It certainly is.
Of course, it's between McLaren and Ferrari. I was just thinking a reflection on the Leclerc brothers, and does it slightly illustrate just how embedded Charles Leclerc is within the Ferrari family? His brother's there as well. His manager is the son of the legendary team principal, in the context of Lewis Hamilton going there next year, and how he can make his own space. Yes, he's the star signing on a huge salary and everything else, but there's a driver ensconced there already.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, but the team principal is a man that ran both Charles and Lewis in their early junior career. Freddie Vasseur was in charge of ART, which was the team Lewis was driving for in GP2 back in those days, in Euro F3 as well. He knows Lewis very well. They've kept a relationship over the years, and Freddie is in no doubt as to the fairness that he will put into the treatment of both drivers on that one, and the fact that because he's known them both for so many years, he can treat them in a way that most team principals wouldn't be able to do. So I take what you're saying. I think the flip side of that is he has in Freddie Vasseur a team principal that will ensure that whilst one driver might be ensconced in Ferrari, it won't take the other driver very long to get to that stage.
It's not unbalanced, of course, no, but it's the Leclercs are a presence within that team.
I think you'll find the Hamiltons will be
as well.
They will be,
very much
and
so.
Given how much Ferrari are paying Lewis Hamilton, it would be silly to invite him over and then not give him that same treatment. Take the point, though, entirely. And I'm sure Lewis has been to Fernando Alonso and had a chat with him about his time at Ferrari too, and asked for a bit of advice, because whatever their rivalry on the track over the years, you know, the two former teammates have also kept up a relationship off the track, especially in the latter years. Now they're the elder statesmen. Can we call them a Formula One, and will be both racing next year past their 40th birthday?
Of course, Lewis trying to do what Fernando couldn't do, what Sebastian Vettel couldn't do, Alain Prost. The list goes on, and win a championship with Ferrari. Yeah,
Lewis is the only driver, isn't he, to win a race over 300 Grand Prix competed in as well. Checker flag is out, so drivers completing their final flying laps here, and then we'll get some practice starts, and we'll wrap it all up, and we'll hear from Zach Brown in a few moments' time too, with Simon and Danica and Martin down in the paddock. Charles Leclerc will end up this session 2/10 ahead of Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc, who had to wait half an hour to get onto the track, and has made good use of his time on it. We were saying in the early stages, neither team in the battle for the Constructors' Championship wants to have any issues. If Ferrari have had their issues, they put it right, they're going to end up on top.
Both teams need both cars to finish the Grand Prix. Even McLaren become vulnerable if one car were to not finish for one reason or another. But I think this may be ever so slightly backs up the feeling that it's a track.
Thank you, Luke. Good session. Lots we can do in the test together, but good to see the progression across it, and good underlying foundations. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
He'd be relieved that he didn't gain one other black and white flag.
Yeah.
But I think it backs up the idea that it's slightly more of a Ferrari track this maybe than a McLaren track, and I guess that's good box office for the weekend.
I've just seen a team radio excerpt that we may or may not hear from Fernando Alonso. As we looked at the new CEO of Aston Martin, Andy Cowell, who's come in, has replaced Martin Whitmarsh, making a huge difference, I'm told, within the factory and doing some very good work, but he knows there is a lot still to do at that team to put right the slope downwards over the last year and a half. Fernando Alonso has just been on the team radio and said, worst car ever and worst track. That is a damning assessment.
It's been a difficult second half of the year in particular for Aston.
It's been a
difficult full year, but it's got worse, hasn't it?
Well, it's got worse from the second half of last year. Yeah. That's the trouble.
But Andy Cowell definitely making a difference there.
Here we go.
Worst car ever and worst traffic preparation ever. Next time I'll lap myself.
And significantly, Cowell also going over to Japan just to liaise with Honda. That's his area of expertise previously, and that might be the differentiator possibly in 2026.
He knows engineering as well, and he knows that they need to put right what has happened within the engineering department at that team, and he's got a few ideas, I'm sure.
What's more important to him today, this session or
worst car
the
ever?
this
worst traffic
this
preparation
for his future.
Next time I'll
what happens in F2 for the present.
But it's pretty 50-50. I mean,
No, I don't think he has to be champion to go on to compete. He wants to be champion, obviously, but he doesn't have to be a champion to go on to compete for RB or Racing Bulls for next season. Lewis Hamilton wants to head onto the grid for his race start a little further up the grid, do some burnouts as well, which is exactly what he's doing. And a la Hungary 2021, 2022, he's going to start all on his own on the grid.
Yes, that was an ill-judged moment, a rare one from Mercedes strategy, but.
Let's have a listen to the start, shall we? Yeah, it didn't take long to get over 100 miles an hour, did it? Never does in a Formula One car. That's the end then of this first practice session, and here is some breaking news for you. This is not good news for Ferrari in the battle for the Constructors' Championship. Charles Leclerc finishes fastest, but they had to change the battery pack on his car.
Hello to my brother. Yeah, I've seen, because it's quite good.
Right, we're going to put an arm around him, Arthur. Charles has had the battery pack changed on his car. It's a 10-place grid penalty. As we see the two brothers having a wave on the track. I think Arthur might want to have a little arm around his brother there and say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, mate. This is bad news for Ferrari. They have a 21-point gap to overhaul in the championship. Charles Leclerc starting 10 places back.
Goodness, who would have thought the first practice session, we thought the least representative session of the weekend, could have such a conclusion, but that is a hammer blow to Ferrari's hopes.
He was fastest on the track by 2/10 for Lando Norris. 10-place grid penalty for Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton, third fastest, just under half a second back, ahead of his teammate George Russell at Mercedes, his final weekend at Mercedes. Pierre Gasly, fifth. Hülkenberg in his final weekend at Haas was sixth. Colin Pinto in his final weekend at Williams was seventh. And Magnussen in his final weekend for Haas was eighth. Sergio Perez just behind Filippo Drugovich, 90th and possibly final start for Red Bull this weekend. Valtteri Bottas, 13th in his final start for Sauber. We have Ryu Hirakawa and Isaac Hadja, FP1 sessions for them. Zhou Guanyu, his final weekend for Sauber too. Jack Doohan on his debut for Alpine. Luke Browning 2.2 seconds off the pace. Leclerc fastest, but Ferrari hit with a big blow